Hey, how's it going? So today I want to talk about the movie School Ties. But before I start, I just want to make sure everyone understands this is opinion commentary for your entertainment. Always with the spoilers, just expect it. I won't tell you everything. I'm not a monster. So the topic today is School Ties. It came out in 1992. It was co-written by The screenplay was co-written by Dick Wolf, whose name you'll know from Law and Order fame, and Daryl Ponnickson, whose name I'm not familiar with, but they co-wrote it, and it specifies in the bio on IMDb that it comes from a Dick Wolf story, which is interesting because I had been wondering while I was sort of putting together this presentation, I guess, whether or not the person who wrote about the people in the story, particularly the rich people, did the author come from that perspective? And I asked the question because, like myself, just in real life, there are very wealthy people that are very much in the focus of everyone right now. And what we see of them is not the whole of who they are, or even like it with an actor, probably not the whole of who you don't see the whole of who they are, or even at all who they are publicly. uh, we all wear like a mask when we're out in society or presenting ourselves to the world. I mean, it's just something I think about and have been talking about a lot, like here and in my WordPress. um, and it's just kind of like the way that the rich people treat the rest of us, basically, whoever they deem not good because of their financial status, uh, is like determines like how good of a person you are, uh, which is ironic because we're finding out that as good as the perception has always been that like rich people have like better educations and therefore like knew more things and were like so-called better people, excuse me, and we're finding out that they are big projectors of they'll rail against things that they absolutely are and do. um I'm not going to name names here because that will cause me to snowball into a whole other digression. But let's just say we know who these people are, but they treat the wealthy and the rich treat the rest of us like some kind of like token game tokens and disposable, non-thinking units or something. Like they just have their opinions and that's where they are, and nothing will change it until you have like a Ghislaine Maxwell situation where like all of your wealth and finery are just taken from you, and reality is boom plunked right down in front of your face. So that's obviously where my mind is out about this stuff. So okay. Did I show the cast and crew? I don't know. I'll just show it a second time if I did. So yeah, this is my number three in my Brendan Fraser retrospective, and I'm just gonna hold it up so I don't have to stumble over all of the names. And there are some notes off to the side for me. Okay, I hope that was long enough for you to see, and also that it came out in 1992. All right, so Brendan Fraser plays a young man named David Green, and he is a football star from his small, I'm thinking Eastern Seaboard ish town. Sorry about that. And he's the star quarterback, and he's a good kid. He and his family work really hard, and they're, I would say, not like the highest of class, but not exactly groveling in the gutter either. And so I think that by putting that there and showing that his father and he were really hard workers and really honest people, by presenting them the way they did in the beginning, I think it was to establish the fact that these are the good people, uh, the the salt of the earth people, and ultimately the higher morality people. So I don't want to get any more ahead of myself than that with that idea, but David, is the quarterback on the local football team, and he's taken the team to the championship. And so a someone approaches him that's a coach from a private school. I want to call it a prep school. I don't know the difference between a private high school and whatever. It's a private high school attended by fairly wealthy fictional people. I think none of the names were familiar, so I think they were like just dreamed up names. But just like in every place in this country, for some reason, high school football is really high stakes for people that play it. Kids in the school and the coaches and the school staff and whatever. Of course, it's a big deal for them and like the parents, but it's almost as big a deal as like pro football, I guess, because you can go attend it for far less a fee. And well, anyway, I don't want to talk about football crap. I don't really know about football. But the school sees that private school sees that this kid David has won a championship for his team, and they have a long-standing rivalry with another school from their area, and they get the coach to basically go and procure David, and they, you know, lure him in with promises of like a, better education. Well, he's going to get an education, that's for sure. And they sort of dangle Harvard in front of him as if they can, and maybe they could, like, well, probably because that's kind of the point that I have. The problem I have with the rich people who have so much problem with other people having entitlements. But if they grab up this kid from some podunk obscure town and use him as a ringer, which is what they end up, that's what it's about, because that's what they do. But the one thing that's right from the beginning, before he even comes, well, I think he gets told like as he arrives at the school, but the school's coach is the one who is the procurer, and I guess he's done it before, which is why I refer to him that way. He doesn't, it's not a sexual thing in this context like it usually is, but he does go out and find these ringers for the school so that they can finally beat their other Richie school rival. Like, duh, whatever. Uh, so anyway, it's made clear right from the start that um, A, David is Jewish, and that B, he shouldn't bring it up or talk about it, which, you know, that's a funny thing, coming from the, sorry, white person that it was coming from. And he was like the flunky. He wasn't even really like a board member or a parent, you know, but I'll get there. But, he's out here getting these guys to come to this school so that they can beat their other school rival, which, wow, so important. Uh, but the thing is if you are a whatever marginalized person, you're not going to be running around announcing it. Like, it's not foremost in our minds of most of us. Like, I don't, first thing out of my mouth is like, hi, Black Power, or, whatever. Or I'm a Catholic, which I'm not anymore. Like, I don't, just take what you get, and we'll get there at some point. And if you like the flavor, cool, hang out. If not, go ahead and move on, also cool. But especially if you are the only one of your kind as he was, and you know that there's racism against you, or I don't know, Jewish is not an ethnicity, but it gets perceived that way. It's a religion. Um, but if you know that you're sort of persecuted wherever you go, you're not going to bring it up. I don't know. You're just not marching around declaring your whatever it is usually. And you kind of see Brendan Fraser was such a good actor, is such a good actor. But in that scene, he got it. He like the expression on his face was like, mm-hmm, like, why would I? But that's part of it too. That like having a perception of something and not knowing the reality, and believing your perception to be the truth. Even though you can cognize, even though you can be cognizant of the fact that this person is, they have their religion or whatever, but they're still just another person. And that was not what I was going to say, but I stumbled over that cognizant business and lost my train of thought. But anyway, they want this kid at the school to be undercover, and it's not just the coach, like the whole faculty, like board or whatever, is part clergy, which I don't know if they're Catholic or Protestant or what, some kind of cross wearing, worshiping. And he David is just like, and this happens, kids that are not Christian go to Christian schools all the time, like for educational benefits or whatever it may be to get on their resume. But they're all perpetrating in this fraud. Like they don't want this kid to come out and say what he is, which, like I said before, the actor, the role, the person in real life is not going to march around announcing that like right up front. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of shitty. But that's, you know, you are a person, but just take everything that's about you, like, because we find it offensive, and don't say anything, just cover it up. Like, thanks, I wasn't talking about it anyway, but now that you brought it up, you suck. That's how I have felt in those situations. And I know that it's a feeling that I understand that they don't understand, because you don't know what you don't know. But until you acknowledge that you don't know stuff, and that your information is based on what some other person, just like you said, and not of anything of the person that you have all these ideas that you're so set on. You have nothing that comes from them directly. Like you can cognize that it's pretty, 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, pretty simple. But we can just put up some kind of barriers in our minds that just say, okay, well, that's no longer here. We will no longer think about this in this way. It's like we have like just selective reasoning, selectivism. We can do that. Okay, so that's the situation on the ground. And then you have what these people do to their own people, like their own kids. And it's such a cliched thing. Like there's a teacher that Mr. Cleary was on the cast list. I That's another reason I hung that up, because I got to that man's name, and he's in a lot of stuff. Like he's been in, like, I think he was in The Wire, and definitely Law and Order, and all kinds of police procedurals. But anyway, in movies. But he played Mr. Cleary, and that's why I put it, because I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Zeljko Ivanek. But the first Zielko, I don't know. That's not why I had the names of the cast written down, but that's a factor. So anyway, he's the teacher, and he's this officious little pretentious twerp. He's not rich. He's one of the teachers, but he's got this snobby little snooty car, and he's all fussy with it, and he has all these like fashion affectations. Like I think he wears a beret, and yeah, he wears a beret, and he uses a walking stick, and like I use a cane because, well, not so much anymore. But I have used a cane because I needed to, and I wasn't doing any Charlie Chaplin and pointing it like I was doing a 21 gun salute or any other ridiculousness. He was just all affectation. And he was so hard on those kids, and it's so obvious that he would have liked to have had their lives, and feels obviously that they don't appreciate their, you know, lives that are just given to them that they were born into. And so his like passive aggressive is very aggressive on these kids, and they're under a lot of pressure to perform too. And Matt Damon's character Charlie Dillon even talks about it. He says that you know they do what they're told, and then they're given a good life. And what happens when David comes in is Charlie had been the star of the school, but he wasn't winning that championship for the school. And like even his own father, who's on their board or whatever, is part of the decision to bring in this other kid who's bigger and better a player, David Green, the hidden Jew. And so he loses that sort of vaunted social position. It was like important to him to, of course, be big man on campus because that's a trope in reality and on screen. And so is the teacher, Mr. Cleary, who is so hard on these kids that, like I said, are under already a bunch of pressure. That so much so that one kid is driven insane. He tries to kill himself, so he has to be just taken away to, I guess, the crazy house at the time because it was the 50s or the loony bin. But it, being wealthy, it probably wouldn't have been as bad of a place. But I think that, well, I know that the care was just bad because the knowledge was not well distributed or understood, and so many factors played in, like racism and sexism and every other ism that we still have against each other today, ridiculously. Because as it plays out even in this story, it doesn't matter what our perceptions are or what we look like. It is the content of our character that determines how good or bad of a person we are. So Charlie loses this position, and he's kind of miffed about it, but he likes David and he likes the team winning, and David is generous and shares and kind of understands that he's like stolen this guy's spot, and he makes him a part of the plays and winning the games, and gives him back his popularity. And then you know I'll get to something else that I was going to say later, if we'll see if I do. But then he's around these guys and he's getting to know them, and they're hanging out and they're listening to, I'm just going to say it, jigaboo music. And I don't know, like, I think they were listening to Smokey Joe's Cafe. And I'm sorry, I don't know the name off the top of my head. I'll just write down here right now, link that. Smokey Joe's Cafe. And they're dancing around in their room, a bunch of kids. It's a dorm, so they're all like in, I think, Charlie and David's room, the popular kids. And they're dancing and they're singing along. And in comes Cleary, Mr. Cleary, and he's like the like head master of their dorm or whatever. And he's like, we won't have that kind of jungle music in here, and blah, 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 blah. And so he makes them take it off. And then they're just talking, and it's just that casual racism that It does go on in rooms of white people. Obviously, not fully if I'm in the room, but sometimes they get so comfortable with me there that they just say shit. They'll say anything, not understanding or even thinking that it might be offensive. But I don't want to go into like my whole level of offense personally on all of that stuff. It's kind of a tedious and tiresome, long taking discussion that I ain't gonna do here or now. But while he's hanging out with these guys, they go from talking about like they don't ever say the word nigger or jigaboo or anything like that. I think the worst thing they say is jungle music. There might have been a monkey reference. I'm not sure. I don't listen real hard at stuff like that. You could probably understand why. Uh, but they're just talking, and the talk goes as it often does. And they're just, you know, well, at least it's not a Jew, and Jews are this, and Jews are that. And it's like they got a Jew in the room, the only one they probably ever actually really had any serious contact with, interaction with. And that guy has to sit there and just, for a number of reasons, because of the script, take it. But in reality, unless you want to, like, add some excitement to your day and announce that something that is being said is offensive to you, I mean, I don't know how easy it is to say shit like that about people. Because I know sometimes, like the Karen things, where they're just walking up and saying whatever's from the depth of their soul about black people that is usually hurtful to us. Like, even to watch from a distance remotely on YouTube, it's kind of hurtful because it's someone that has in their mind these perceptions about you and these ideas, and it's something that's shared amongst people that don't spend time with the people that they are talking about. Or if they do, they're not genuine. So you think you're talking to one person, but then if they either get comfortable around you, or you're not around, or you overhear because they don't think you're around, it's just who they are and what they'll say changes depending on whether you're in the room or not, if it's a race thing. And that works about other stuff too. Like if you go out in public, you act differently than you do when you're just home yourself picking your nose or whatever. But it's I don't I don't know why it's not important to these people who could, if they wanted to, like they have the capacity to understand why it's hurtful to stand there and say things that you think are true about people that are negative, that actually are not true. But then when you have the person there, or they try to tell you the reality, your mind is made up. You don't want to hear it. And that's hurtful too. It's like you're just, boy, talk about canceling. That is like canceling out. You can see that this person has canceled you out in their mind, like whatever you're telling them, whatever you are, whatever you're being around them is giving them, they're just self-editing it to their own specifications. And why that is, it's deep things inside of them, and we all have them, and I'm not going to go into it any further than that because not the here and now for that. This situation, I am just gonna speculate on this, is deteriorating inside David as this progresses. But when you have to live that way, you develop a tolerance. So he has bad moments and he has good moments, but he has to keep all of it to himself. So the plot thickens and gets worse when as David gets closer to Charlie, and I think has more empathy for the guy's situation, because he knows he's under pressure. He's under the same pressures that McGivern was under, that he cracked because the teacher McClary was so hard on him. But like Charlie says in there somewhere to David, that they're under so much pressure, and that's why he talks about they do it. They're told, and then they're given a good life, but they're also expected to perform in certain ways, just like our Olympics here and now. Our Olympians are cracking under the pressure, but they have the capacity to understand it and just say, look, whatever you think, this is harder than you even have any idea. So this is what I'm going to do. But that's here and now. In the movie, that pretty much isn't done. Like, you don't even really get to decide your own level of mental health. Like, they would just throw you in a loony bin post haste because it was embarrassing, because it was a loss of face to have this mentally infirm, erratic, irrational person. You must hide them. Yeah, and you must hide everything distasteful, perceived to be distasteful. It sounds like a really restrictive world, so many people expect so much from you, and ugh, you get that in life too, for real. So it's just hard for everyone, but David and Charlie are getting closer, and so there comes some sort of holiday or whatever, some cause for football and people to get together. And this other family that is also on the board has a daughter that Charlie has known since they were both children, and everyone else thinks they're just together. And Charlie goes along with that. And the girl, Sally Wheeler, says later at some point that no, that's not the case. But she doesn't really do much to dispel the perception until David Green comes along, and she really likes him, and he can dance, and he's the great football player. And so it just happens that he ends up with Charlie's girl too. So that's another blow to his ego, to his social position. And I mean, what do you expect? That you don't need fiction to figure that three-way dynamic out. And then to find out that she was like, "Yeah, you were just convenient, basically." Like, I don't think the kid in the movie, or in the script, had the depth to say that, but she certainly acted it. Um, I got the idea she wasn't saying much to anybody, and would have. Uh, I mean, even while I was watching, I was like, "You little tease." Anyway, that does not make things better for David. It creates this terrible dynamic where the resentment could have been there in building, but it hadn't been until the girl happened. And then, mm, let's just say Charlie learns of David's secret, and he really lashes out at him. And this is where the moral character part comes in. The way David Green is treated is such a good example of anyone to react to injustice in any situation, like anyone of any race, whatever, anybody. He was just so poised, and when he did have some retort, it was well thought, and it was mannered for the situation. And he also took one for the team for the sake of Charlie Dillon. Like, he didn't have to, but he knew he was temporary there, and then it all became so much clearer as it went along, just who and what he was to those people. And then by the time the girl learned the situation, well, then it all became painfully clear. So that was the dynamic of the movie, and it did take me a while to get on here and start talking about it, because it really was like, I guess, hitting a lot of emotional nerve endings or something. It just took me a long time to like work through it and to even be able to like write down an outline of what I wanted to sit here and gab about. And then complicating matters, right when I was about to do it, but I wasn't quite in the mindset. I was going to wait a few hours. I decided to watch The Great Gatsby. Similar themes. I hope that didn't make a sound on here. I probably did. Uh, and that that's something that was on reading lists in school, but because I'm a big reader, I had so many things on there that I had already read that I didn't need to I didn't need to read it. And there I had heard lots of discussions about it in school, and boy did we not know what the hell we were talking about or reading. If the movie is a fair, the one from 1974, if that's a fair depiction of what the book is, then we didn't get anything about that story. And but I hadn't read it, so I did see it, and from the descriptions I had read of it, it was not at all what I thought. But it had many of the same themes, and I was really wounded for Gatsby when shoot, Daisy was like, "Rich girls don't marry poor boys." Daisy was crazy. Why would you even want that little nut job? I don't know. We all get stuck on things. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But that sort of, The Great Gatsby sort of compounded that sort of like mean dynamic, and that way we place restrictions on ourselves and dividers between us over like stuff that's not even real. It's just stuff that we're thinking and dreaming up amongst each other who also don't know what we're talking about. It's kind of sad. um I hope that we're, well, whatever. I was going to say I hope that we're going to get better at listening to each other at the very least. But well, I guess we'll see. Anyway, thank you and good night.